Dr. Prabhu.
Yes, repeat.
Yeah, I'm online. Jaya Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Giri Varadhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Giri Varadhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Nita Gauranga, Nitai 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 Gauranga, Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nishtaki Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Although I have no qualifications, I've been asked to speak here. So please forgive me for all any mistakes I do today, this morning in the lecture, and look forward to any corrections in this discussion. Hare Krishna. The verse this morning in this lecture is on Achinta Bheda, and we are reading this verse. Like to seek forgiveness, I will read the translation, the verse translation, and one paragraph of the purport. And since the session today on Achinta Bheda is very long, and Prabhu here said that this will continue, this verse will continue tomorrow. Nishevitena nimittena swadharmena mahiyasam kriyayogena shastena nati himsrena nityashaham. Nishevitena nimittena swadharmena mahiyasam kriyayogena shastena nati himsrena nityashaham. Translation: a devotee must execute his prescribed duties, which are glorious, without material profit. Without excessive violence, one should regularly perform one's devotional activities. Purport: one has to execute his prescribed duties according to his social position as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. The prescribed duties of the four classes of men in human society are also described in Bhagavad Gita. The activities of Brahmanas are to control the senses and to become simple, clean, learned devotees. The Kshatriyas have the spirit for ruling. They are not afraid on the battlefield, and they are charitable. The Vaishyas, or the mercantile class of men, trade in commodities, protect cows, and develop agricultural produce. The Shudras, or the labor class, serve the higher classes because they themselves are not very intelligent. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. So, this topic of Achinta Bheda, I will provide a little bit of introduction as I begin. The topic as such is the session, the contents of this material, by and large, are taken from Jiva Goswami's various sandarbhas. And part of it, here and there, you will find some justifications from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And in turn, those sandarbhas quote various Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutra, and some of it is also built from the Govinda Bhashya of Srila Baladeva Vidyabhushan. So the first two slides, I've just given a little bit introduction to Achinta Bheda. Parts of this session, I have spoken in some academies associated with ISKCON. But however, the topic as such deals with four principal questions of Vedanta. One is, what is the nature of the ultimate reality, which the Vedanta Sutra calls this as the Brahman? What is the relationship of the world to Brahman? What is our nature? That is the nature of the living entities. So the second question is to do with Jada, the relationship between the world to Brahman. And the third question is to do with the Jiva, souls with Brahman. And the last question is, how do we obtain final liberation? So in a sense, these questions are divided. The first chapter, so the Vedanta Sutra contains 4 chapters. And the 4 chapters, the first one we could say is the introduction, which talks about the nature of this ultimate reality. The second, third, and the 4th chapter in turn talk about Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana. And the last chapter, the fourth chapter, is how do we obtain this final liberation? So that is, this is how do we obtain is the Abhideya, but then it ends with Prayojana. Shriman Rasarasarambi, Vamsi Vata, Tadastita, Karshan Venu, Sunair Gopi, Gopinatha Shriyasutra. The last chapter deals with the ultimate goal of this Vedanta. So in order for this Vedanta Sutra to explain this Vedanta Sutra, there are some explanations that have been given by various acharyas. So I have divided this is an introductory slide. I have divided this in such a way that these are the 6 existing commentaries of the Vedanta Sutra or the Brahma Sutra. So one existing commentary has been written by Shankaracharya, and it is called as the Sharirika Bhashya, which is the commentary for the Brahma Sutra written by Shankaracharya. And the philosophy is called as Kevala Advaita, but it is concomitant with Mayavada. Both go together. And then you have, I've divided this line into the other sect, which is the Vaishnava commentaries. So there are Sharika, it is just used as the name for it. That's it. Sharika. Kevala Advaita. Kevala Advaita. Because there is, because Advaita, I'll talk about it in a second. So Kevala Advaita, which is concomitant in Mayavada. And then I divided that, and then you have the Vaishnava commentaries on the other side. So there are only 2 kinds of commentaries. One is the one written by Shankaracharya, and all the others are Vaishnavite in nature. So you don't have like a Shaivite commentary, Shakta commentary, and so on. So in the other set of commentaries you have, one you have is called as the Sri Bhashya, which was written by Ramanujacharya. And this is the commentary for the Brahma Sutra written by Ramanujacharya. And then you have the Madhva Bhashya, and Madhvacharya wrote commentary on the Brahma Sutra. And then you have a commentary written by Nimbarkacharya, which is called as Vedanta Parijata Saurabha. And a 4th commentary, which originally didn't, which has been lost over time, was written by Vishnu Swami. But in the recent times, that commentary was written by Vallabhacharya, who is mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and that Bhashya is called as Anubhashya. So the Ramanujacharya's Bhashya goes with a philosophy called as the Vishishta Advaita, qualified non-dualism. Madhvacharya's commentary, which is called as Tattvavada, but it is popularly called as Dvaita or dualism, which talks about absolute Bheda. And then Nimbarkacharya's commentary is called as Dvaita Dvaita, which is very similar to Bheda Bheda, minus the Achintya component. And then the Vallabhacharya's commentary is called as, philosophy there is called as Shuddha Advaita, or pure non-dualism, to distinguish it with the Shankaracharya's Kevala Advaita. The Shankaracharya's Kevala Advaita is concomitant with Mayavada. Vallabhacharya's explanation for the Vedanta Sutra is called Shuddha Advaita because it is minus Mayavada. So, and the prelude to this is that the Achintya Bheda Bheda forms the natural conclusive philosophy, which pretty much has the tenets of all these philosophies, but it is also like a natural meaning which does not require interpretation. So today we will focus only on Achintya Bheda Bheda. So there are some terminologies which are sort of required to understand this, the metaphysics of Achintya Bheda Bheda. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela 7.117 says, Jiva Tattva Shakti, Krishna Tattva Shaktiman. And what is the basis for this? Gita, Vishnu Purana Adi. So Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Purana, all these are the pramana, the basis, the authoritative conclusions for saying Jiva Tattva Shakti, that the living energy, the living souls, they belong to the category called as Shakti. Krishna Tattva, the Vishnu Tattva here is the energetic Shaktiman. So this is one concept that we have to understand as we build this, our understanding of Achintya Bheda Bheda. So you have a power that is Shaktiman, and sorry, Shakti and Shaktiman, the energetic and the energy. So you have the power of burning, and Shakti, which is the energy, is that which burns. So this is one concept that we want to understand. And so then we'll build this further. The second concept that we need to sort of get a hang of as we build this is this verse, which forms the basis of a lot of things that will help us with the understanding of Achinta Bheda Bheda. Vadanti tat vidam tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdayate. This is Bhagavatam 1.2.11. So this verse is a heavily used verse in the Bhagavat Sandarbha. So Jiva Goswami, in the first Sandarbha called as the Tattva Sandarbha, establishes the Srimad Bhagavatam as the authoritative pramana or basis for understanding the Vedanta, which in turn is comprised of Brahmanas, Aryankas, Upanishads, and Samhitas. And all this is codified in what is called as the Vedanta Sutra, which contains only 4 chapters. But Jiva Goswami says that he gives so many proofs that the Srimad Bhagavatam has to be taken as the basis for understanding all these Brahmanas, Samhitas, Upanishads, and so on. And after he builds that, the next Sandarbha, which is called as the Bhagavat Sandarbha, there all the first set of Anuchedas, actually a bunch of Anuchedas, deal just with this one verse, which forms the basis for the metaphysics associated with Achinta Bheda Bheda. Vadanti tat tatvidam tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdete. So I'm going to spend about 2-3 slides on this, because without this verse, it is very hard to build the understanding on Achinta Bheda Bheda. So this Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan are qualitatively one. Okay, that is the word Advayam. Those who are perfect seers, they are saying Vadanti, they are saying about this Tattva, that, and what are they saying about this Tattva, the absolute truth? They are saying that they are 3 features. The translation, I've just taken it directly from some of the texts produced by Rupanuga Vedic College and translations of Shat Sandarbha, about 3 features of the absolute truth, and that they are 3 perspective views of different angles of vision. So that means in the relative world, in the material world, what is different? Okay, the knower and the known are different. So we are the knower, we are trying to understand something else, the absolute truth. So we are the knower, and then there is a known. Suppose I want to understand this table. I am the knower, and the known is the table. So me and this table are different. So there is a duality in this material world. But in the absolute world, both the knower and the known are the same thing. So that is the rider to this particular thing. So the absolute truth is both the subject and the object. So we'll build this a little more. So now that there is a hierarchy of, Jiva Goswami says, but still there is a hierarchy of revelation. And what is the hierarchy of revelation? Is that Jiva Goswami says that this Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are not randomly written in some order, but it is specified in a particular order, that Brahman, then Paramatma, then Bhagavan as the ultimate reality. So this Brahman is when the attributes of the absolute truth are totally unmanifest. So there are no attributes manifest, then it is known as Brahman. It is undifferentiated, unqualified, impersonal, absolute. So if we take, it is completely devoid of attributes, unqualified, undifferentiated, and such an impersonal absolute is being referred to here as Brahman. But then there is there is another concept here as Paramatma. So here as Paramatma, as the inner controller, so these words are all definitions, words given by Jiva Goswami in the Bhagavad Gita as defining Paramatma in the Bhagavad Sandarbha. These are Anuchedas 3, 4, 7. Paramatma as the inner controller, as the inspirer and the support of the cosmos. And then as Bhagavan, as the complete manifestation of this non-dual reality. So the non-dual part is still there as Advayam, non-dual reality, and indeed identifiable with it. So in him, in this Bhagavan, all the Shaktis are supremely visible. And what are like examples? The beauty, power, wisdom, majesty, abode, associate, all these qualities are inherent in this Bhagavan. So you have Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. So this is the second concept I want to build on. So the first concept we spoke about is that of Shaktiman and Shakti, the energetic and the energy. The second concept we're talking about here is Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. And this is the last part of the same Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, that our understanding that there is a different vision in the material world and the spiritual world. In the material world, the knower is the living spirit, that is the Jiva soul, which belongs to the superior energy. I'm just building a little bit here, whereas the inert matter Jada is of the inferior energy. Therefore, there is a duality between the inferior energy and the superior energy. So, and the living being in contact with the inferior energy is illusioned and thinks that they also belong to the inferior energy. So there is a sense of relativity. But in the absolute world, why it is considered to be non-dual is because both the knower and the known are of the same superior energy, which is spirit. And in the absolute, there is no such difference between the knower and the known. So everything is absolute. So two things that we have built so far in understanding this. One is the concept of Shaktiman and Shakti. And second is the concept of Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Now, we'll go to one more concept here. So here, I'm going to combine a little bit theology with the metaphysics. The theology here is the identity of that Bhagavan. So Jiva Goswami in Bhagavad Sandarbha, this is his own commentary about it, which is called as the Sarva Sambhadini. He has taken two statements here. One is from Vishnu Purana, and other is a very similar statement taken from Rig Veda 1.22.20. Sarva Sambhadini is throughout the 6 Sandarbhas. In between, here and there, Jiva Goswami writes his own commentary for his Sandarbha, which is called a Sarva Sambhadini. And where here in the Vishnu Purana, he has taken this verse which says, Shruti Bhakyoditam Sukshamam Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam. And then there's this part here, Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam. He finds a similar phrase in Rig Veda where it says, Tadvai Pashyanti Surayaha. And he says that this Bhagavan is identified with Vishnu. And so that is the theological thing. I'm just stating one thing here, but I will build this much more later towards the end of this session. Now, we spoke about Shaktiman, which is Bhagavan. Now, we'll talk a little bit about Shakti, the Jiva. This is from Paramatma Sandarbha 54 and 70, that this Shakti is the most important attribute of the Shaktiman. So that there is an Abheda part and a Bheda part. The Abheda part says that this Shakti is absolutely one and inseparable from the Shaktiman, and there it establishes complete unity. There is absolute homogeneous whole between the Shakti and the Shaktiman. But at the same time, now he's trying to separate it, and that is the Bheda. And what is the Bheda? That is, so that the inseparable whole is taken from Vishnu Purana 1.22.54. That's where Jiva Goswami cites this from, where he says, Parasya Brahmanaha. So this Brahman, Shaktis, Tadedam, Akilam Jagat. So everything is absolute one. But in the same Vishnu Purana, as the subsequent verse, he cites, Jiva Goswami cites, Vishnu Shaktihi Para. But this there are three Shaktis here. So he separates it from that Shaktiman by saying Tritiya Shaktir Ishyate, that there are three energies. There are three energies. So there, here, the Shaktiman is being separated from the Shakti. So that means all the statements in the Shruti has some statements which are called as Abheda Shruti. That is, there are statements which says Sarvam Kalvedam Brahma, that all there exists is Brahman. So this is the Abheda Shruti. Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi. These are all Abheda Shruti. But the Shruti doesn't stop there. If it was all just that much, it would have made all the commentators' life very easy. But the Shruti goes on and gives various phrases which are called as Bheda Shruti, where there are absolute differences. Nityo, Nityanam, Chetanas, Chetananam. Like this, there are Bheda Shruti. And there are also, in top of this, there are also what are called as Ghataka Shruti, which are the bridge shlokas, where, like, even in the Bhagavad Gita, we can see where Sutre Manigane. So just as pearls strung on the neck. So these are bridge shlokas. They're also bridge shlokas. So here Jiva Goswami talks about Abheda from Vishnu Purana, and then he talks about the three energies. Tritiya Shakti Rishite, three energies. And what are the three Shaktis? These are terms that are used by Jiva Goswami, that this are in turn divided into three energies, where this is the Bheda, where the separation happens. Separation is there between the absolute, between the personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, and his energies. And what are the three energies? The internal energy called as Antaranga Shakti. And then you have external energy, which is called as Bahiranga Shakti. And then the marginal energy, which is called as the Tatashta Shakti. But this internal energy, in turn, is divided into three subcomponents, which are called as Sandini, Sambit, and Hladini. So this is basically Satchit and Ananda. The Ananda is the Hladini component. And then you have the external energy, which is the Bahiranga Shakti, which manifests as the temporary phenomenal world. And then you have the living energy, the Tata, which means shore, lying on the shore, which can be under the control of the internal energy or under the control of the external energy. And under the control of external energy, these are the terms. It is called as Mahamaya, which in turn contains two components. Jiva Goswami defines that, and it is called as Avarnatmika Maya, which means that it covers the knowledge of the self-identity of the Jiva soul. So the Jiva soul now recognizes itself with the external energy instead of the instead of it being the superior energy. And the other one is called as Vikshepatmika Maya, which means that Maya also attaches the living entity to anything that is material. So there is an attachment to matter, and there is a covering of the Jiva's knowledge of the Jiva's identity with the true self. The true ego is so this is. So the true identity is covered. So it's a twofold Maya. So the living energy is under the control, comes under the control of the external energy. So this is a third concept as we build. Now, another place where we try to understand this, as I'm going to build more on the Abheda and Bheda, is this verse in the Bhagavatam 1.1.1. This is a very, very deep verse, and the purport runs for several pages, and it has so much substance with respect to Achinta Bheda in this one verse and purport. And Lord is, if you compare the Lord as Bhagavan as the mine of gold, and all the cosmic creations, everything emanating from this, but you can make the creation, you can compare that with many, many ornaments and necklaces you can make. So like you have a gold mine, and you can also have many gold particles spilled all over. So in substance, they're all gold, but the gold particles can be covered by sand. That is Maya. So that means like it can be covered by sand, and it has lost its relationship with that gold mine. So this, and there is also an example of mirage, in the same purport of Bhagavatam 1.1.1, which again talks about that in substance they're all gold, but there is a difference. So there is a Bheda and Abheda in that part. Now, the last building block which I'm going to do here is to just look at this word Achintya. The word Achintya here, Achintya Shakti Ishwara Jagadrupe Parinatha. So this is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 6.170. Avichintya Shakti Yuktasri Bhagavan. So here, that there is absolute identity, but that is not the only thing that exists. There is also absolute difference. So there is absolute identity and absolute difference simultaneously exists between the Shaktiman and the Shakti. And that is Achintya. So, and here is where we are going to start with the word Achintya, but based on Chaitanya Charitamrita, but later I'm going to explain different proofs for the word Achintya from the scriptures. Alone does not. The word alone, there is not just absolute identity alone. If it was just absolute identity, it will be just called Abheda. And if it was just absolute difference, it will be just called Bheda. That is Madhvacharya's Bheda. And absolute identity, you can call it as Vishnu Swami as Abheda. I'm just not calling it Shankaracharya's Abheda because there is also that has a Mayavada component juxtaposed on top of that Abheda. Now, if there was just absolute oneness alone, there is absolute oneness. That is very clear in the Shastras because Shastra says Sarvam Kalvedam Brahma. So that means there is absolute oneness. And the Bhagavatam itself says that Bhadantita Tatvidam Tatvam Yajnanam Advayam. The Brahma Samhita says that Advaitam, Achyutam, Anantarupam. So the Advaitam is already there as Abheda, as absolute oneness. But that is not the only thing that exists, because if there was just absolute oneness, all there was unqualified spirit. So what is absolute oneness means that there is absolute oneness between Brahman and soul. Brahman is the absolute truth. What that Brahman is what all the commentaries are trying to explain. And if there is, and between Brahman and matter, among souls, between soul. So for example, my soul and Prabhuji's soul, they are absolutely one as far as the Abheda is concerned. But then we'll talk about Bheda in the next slide. So Abheda says that there is no difference between Prabhuji's soul, my soul, that Prabhuji's soul, and so on. There is absolute no difference. There is absolutely no difference between what is perceived as matter, soul, God. So this is like an absolute one. But if this alone existed without any Bheda, then Jiva Goswami says that if all the faults, the mistakes of the conditioned soul will become fault of the Brahman. Okay, suppose let's say so there are three substances here. One is matter, one is jada, second is living souls, which we call jiva, and third we have Ishvara. So absolute oneness refers to these three components, jada, jiva, Ishvara, as with absolute identity as just a homogeneous spirit. But if this is called as Abheda. So if there was absolute oneness among these three components, Jada, Jiva, Ishvara, if that alone existed, and Shastra says that there is absolute oneness, but if this alone existed, then the problem with that is there is a problem with Jada, then that will become a problem of that Brahman, because there is absolute oneness. If there is a problem, see, one conditioned soul is whatever mistakes that particular soul is doing, all that will become problem of that Brahman. Is that okay, Prabhu? So that means if the false, so now Shankaracharya solves this problem by a different method. And what is the method he uses? If the faults of this world should not become the fault of Brahman, then how you could do that is to say that the world actually doesn't exist. So that means like, so what is it that we are seeing? So we are seeing matter here. What is it that we are seeing? It actually doesn't exist. So that means in a conditioned state, we see matter, which is, that state is called Vyavaharika state. In a Vyavaharika state, at a lower state, we see matter, but in a higher state, actually none of it existed to even begin with. So none of it existed. All there is just spirit, which is yourself. So there is no difference between, so that means that matter actually doesn't exist. In fact, his commentary of the Vedanta Sutra begins by saying that this world is Maya. That is how it begins. So that means, so to solve this problem, so since there is no Maya, where is the fault for matter? There is no fault for this world. So everything is, so that problem is taken out. But then what happens is, you have now introduced a concept called as Maya. So if there is Maya and there is Brahman, then you have again created duality. Now you have Bheda. So you have Maya in one hand. So that means non-dualism is broken by creating Maya and Brahman. So now you have to say that only in the conditioned state that Maya exists, but in the higher state, even that Maya actually doesn't exist to even begin with. So all there existed was spirit. For us, for a conditioned state, it looks like as though this world is existing because of Maya, but in the ultimate state, even that Maya doesn't exist. That's okay, Prabhu?
Ultimate state Maya doesn't exist. Yeah, that's correct.
I'll come to that. So, yes.
It's a conditioned soul.
Mm.
Krishna said Bhagavad Gita that the soul is pure. So I'm just trying to say that the fault is we are associated with whatever faults you got. But ultimately the soul is faultless, right?
Correct. I'll come to that also, Prabhu. Just give me 1 minute, I'll come to that. So that was the logic. So Shankaracharya, in order to establish Abheda as the only true state, he had to include Mayavada, because otherwise the faults of the material world and the living entities will become fault of the Brahman.
Just if I understand correctly, so what I'm just thinking, brother is telling there is Abheda all the time. So Jagan Mithya, this world is Mithya. So that's why you are seeing yourself different from this world. But in a liberated state, there is nothing. Everything is Brahman only.
Brahman.
So there is no Maya.
There is no Maya. Exactly. There is.
So you are because in the material world you are seeing the duality because you forgot. You don't know your Brahman.
Correct.
You are entering matter.
Correct.
You see that, so that is that difference you are seeing.
Correct.
But in liberated state, everything is Brahman and there is no Maya.
There is no Maya.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that is.
This world is illusion.
Yes, the world doesn't exist at all. Doesn't exist at all. Because if there was something that existed, then it will create duality.
Oh, there is no existence at all.
There is no existence at all.
Then it is not there.
It is not there.
It appears it is there.
Exactly. I'll come to that very, very clear, but you got it. That is exactly what it is. The difference between that kind of Abheda and the Vaishnava's conception of Abheda is different. Because in the Vaishnava's concept of Abheda, the fact that there was an illusion is still real. Because I'll come to that very soon, Prabhu. So that means you can't read. So, and the second part of it is the Shruti also has Bheda Shruti. Bheda Shruti is also there in the Vedanta. All those texts will become falsified. So that means like you have to interpret all the Bheda Shruti in such that those, so what he did was he took like 10 statements called them as Mahavakya and gave precedence to them and all other Bheda Shruti as subservient to the Abheda Shruti to explain. So that means all the Bheda Shruti will become falsified. So that is the second problem with strict Abheda alone. Yes, Prabhu.
Brahman is
What is Brahman actually? If you go to the particle level, what is the particle of Brahman?
I'll come to that also, Prabhu. I'll explain that too. Is it okay? Yes, Mataji. In Shankaracharya's philosophy, you can say that, but ultimately even that sleep state doesn't exist, because if that sleep state existed, it will again create Bheda. So that means I'll give you another example. For example, let's say even the followers of that philosophy, they also go to temple. They also pray to some deity, right? But why are they doing that? Because because ultimately it is of no value to them, right? Because for them, the act of worshipping doesn't exist. The act of the presence of the deity doesn't exist. The act of, you can say that maybe going to a movie theater may be less conducive than another conditioned act, which also doesn't exist, like going to a temple, correct? So all those things don't exist. So, but in the ultimate sense of that Abheda as per Shankaracharya, this is not our Abheda. As per their Abheda, everything you have to let go to understand that all there is just a homogeneous, unqualified, absolute truth called as Brahman, spirit. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
So going to movie or going to temple is same.
In an ultimate sense, yes.
Both
Both are, because both have, one may be completely unhelpful to wake up from that ignorance, but one may be helpful, but ultimately both don't really matter, because both doesn't exist in the first place. Neither I hate to say this sitting in a temple, but neither thing actually exists, right? So according to that Bhashya. Now we'll talk about absolute difference. This is Madhvacharya's commentary. And we have accepted this also. Abheda, we also have absolute oneness. But I will tell you the difference. There is a difference. The difference between Shankaracharya's Abheda and our Abheda, there is a difference there. Because their Abheda includes Mayavada. Our Abheda does not have Mayavada in it. And then here there is absolute Bheda. What is absolute Bheda? Again, there are three things. I just made a graphic here. This is Jiva, this is Jada, matter, and this is Ishvara. So there is absolute difference between Ishvara and Jiva. There is absolute difference between Ishvara and matter. There is absolute difference between Jiva and Jada, matter. There is absolute difference among souls. That means that Madhvacharya here states that there is a reason why some souls are in the mode of goodness, some souls predominantly in the mode of passion, predominantly in the mode of, so it means like certain souls, they will have a better potential to go towards heavenly planetary systems. Let's say Swargaloka, for instance, those in mode of goodness, predominantly in the mode of goodness. And some souls, so that means the potential of one living entity is not equal to the potential of another living entity. And such a difference, this is called as the five-fold difference, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur cites this in his Kalyana Kalpataru. And this five-fold difference, Jada, Jiva, 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 Jada, Jada, Ishvara, Jiva, Ishvara, Jada. This five-fold Pancha Bheda. So this five-fold difference. So that means this table is not equivalent to that chair. They're intrinsically two matters different. So this is absolute difference. And this difference persists in the spiritual world. That means that the service of Hanuman is distinctly different from, let's say, another living entity. And this is absolute difference. There is, because they have those all of, and this also is, there are Shruti statements for this. We'll also talk about this in both in Kata Upanishad and Mundaka Upanishad and so on. And this also, we accept it as it is. We accept Abheda as it is. We accept Bheda as it is. So it means if different, but there are problems if Bheda alone existed. That is what Jiva Goswami says, that if difference alone existed, all the statements of oneness in the scripture will get falsified. And second, if difference alone existed, it means that the Jiva souls will also have independent energies that will be beyond the purview of the Godhead. So we have our own energies, and so now because there is absolute separation from the Jiva and God, that means that we also become like tiny with our own energies, which are completely out of the purview of God. So that is the second problem with strict absolute Bheda. Is it okay, Prabhu?
Last time.
So this, for example, if the living entity was absolutely disconnected from the Godhead, whatever, if we have our actions, our little minute, we would then possess independent energy. We will have our own energy because the God is already got completely separated from the living entity. So that means like there is no more control for God for all our independent. Independent. There'll become an independence for that living entity which got absolutely separated from the Godhead. Is it okay?
What's the problem there? What's the problem?
No,
Because everything is under the control of God.
it's
You're
there
independent.
is no God in control.
Because you already created the Bheda, absolute Bheda you have created.
Because God has control.
Okay, now comes the answer to that question. What is the difference between our Abheda and the Shankaracharya's Advaita? So because we don't have problem with the word Advaita. We have Advaita Acharya, Advaita Achutam Anantarupam. We have Badanti Tatvidam Advayam, and Bhagavatam has so many places where the living entity is equated with the word Atma itself has so many meaning. If you see that verse, Atma Rama Munayo Nirgrantapi Urukrame. So word Atma itself, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives so many explanations to it. So what is the difference between the Abheda of the what we are saying as the natural meaning of the Vedanta and the Shankaracharya's Abheda? The difference here is that the Shankaracharya first used this in his commentary. Which that of a rope and a snake. So that means what he says there is that what we see here in this material world is like we see a snake, but actually the snake doesn't exist. So if it is a rope, but we are seeing a snake. So it's the snake rope analogy. I hope everybody knows this analogy, right? But the Vaishnava's problem with that analogy is what we are explaining here. The problem with that analogy is, even though it is not the snake and it is a rope. If you look at this picture, it is a rope, but it looks like a snake, even though the snake doesn't exist. But the fact that the rope still exists, that is the problem with that analogy. You may mistake the snake for a rope, but so that is the Maya, but it doesn't mean that the rope itself didn't exist. So that means we might mistake the world, this material world, to be real, okay, that is the snake, but actually it doesn't mean that the rope itself didn't exist. It doesn't mean that the illusion itself didn't exist in the first place. That illusion is there, that there is that okay, Prabhu?
A little difficult, but so difficult,
Okay.
I mean, why this Rajasarpa Bhranti? Why are you bringing it?
Because just to distinguish between the Abheda of Mayavada school and the Vaishnava Abheda. That is the only reason why I brought this. So even though the snake doesn't exist, the rope still exists. right? So that means you cannot just say that the world itself, see the fact that our conception of this world, the conditioned soul's conception of the world might be illusory, but there is a real conception of the world which still exists. That means that the rope still exists. Yes.
No, supposing Mayavadis may say, rope is Brahman. But your thing.
Okay, now rope is Brahman according to our conception, not according to, because in Mayavada's conception, neither the snake nor the rope exists.
Mayavad says in the material world there is no Brahman at all.
No, material world itself doesn't exist. Right? Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, but the Mithya, even though they're saying it is illusion, but you cannot have a Mithya, because if there was a Mithya and there was a Brahman, it will create Bheda. It will create duality. In the ultimate sense, even that Mithya has to not exist.
Yeah, according to Mayavad, like this material world is sitting on a chair. So it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Yeah, we are not sitting on the chair.
So that
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't, yeah. All this, yeah, it doesn't exist.
So the only thing exists, yeah, so that's it.
Yeah. That is, there is existence.
And what about everything, nothing?
No, that will become Buddhism. It will become voidism. If there is nothing, then it will become voidism. Here it is, that is, but let me not get into that. I'll just leave that. Yeah. No, it exists. Brahman exists. The spirit exists. Spirit exists.
But in Buddhism, spirit also doesn't.
There is nothing. There is voidism. But I won't go into that part. It's okay. Yeah.
Brahman is sitting.
Because the fact, if there is something sitting, then it creates duality. Because you have the act of sitting, and then you have Brahman. Brahman cannot do anything in the absolute oneness. Brahman exists.
Will they eat?
No.
They don't eat?
No. According in the Vyavaharika state, you can eat. But in the Paramarthika state, there is no eating. The act of eating will create Bheda.
What is Vyavaharika?
Vyavaharika is the lower state.
Day-to-day affairs.
Yeah, is the lower state. Those who are under that grip of Maya, which itself ultimately doesn't exist.
So that means that in the ultimate state, you don't eat, you don't do anything.
There is nothing.
You just exist.
There is existence.
That's why Brahman, there's nothing Brahman, you don't do anything. Yeah.
There is existence. Yes, Prabhu?
But the existence what they talk about,
Mm.
they see the body and then they say that the Brahman exists, or even without seeing the body, they are like, it can exist. Like,
What
is it in connection with the body, or they have,
No, body and all doesn't exist.
but how do they say that the Brahman is existing without?
Because the Shruti is saying so. The Shruti is saying Sarvam Kalavedam Brahma, that all there exists is Brahman. Shruti is saying that.
Right now,
Mm.
tiger is there, this chasing me. Tiger doesn't exist, I don't exist. Then why should I run away? So
Yeah.
Mayavadis, they don't run away at all.
That's why Prabhupada is asking that question. So now Jiva Goswami gives further reason why we should accept Achinta Bheda Bheda. So here we can also, even though we take Shruti as the main pramana, but even those who are just so used to logic, they also can use Tarka Pratishtana and understand about Achinta Bheda Bheda. Like they recognize that neither, if you just take Bheda, okay, then you think about various problems with just absolute Bheda, and then you say, okay, now let me take Abheda is the correct thing to do. And then now you keep on saying everything is Abheda, Abheda, Abheda. Then you find absolute, then you find problems with just strict absolute oneness alone. If that alone exists, then you say, okay, no. Let's just take Bheda. So this means you cannot take Abheda alone. Then you go to Bheda. Then you cannot take Bheda alone. Then you go to Abheda. So this problem, he calls it as a problem of infinite regress. So, and then he says, therefore, we accept both Bheda and Abheda as it is, without any interpretation. So it makes the life very sweet for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. We don't have to interpret anything. If there is an Abheda Shruti, great. If there is a Bheda Shruti, great. Everything, because we have taken both of it as it is, which does not require an interpretation. So this is goes with the famous sentence in this Sarva Sambhadani in the Paramatma Sandarbha 77-78. And then I will explain why this is one of the most significant parts of it. So, but first I want to explain this word Achintya. So far we spoke about Bheda, we spoke about Abheda. Now I want to talk a little about the word Achintya. Achintya is a very significant word. Jiva Goswami wrote a commentary for the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that commentary of the Bhagavatam is called as Krama Sandarbha. So in this Krama Sandarbha, he talks about this analysis of this word Achintya, where he says is Achintya does not refer to the relationship between God and the world, but it is actually referring to absolute Bheda and absolute Abheda existing simultaneously. How can something exist simultaneously, absolutely in both sides? And that is Achintya. That means, is Bheda present? Absolutely yes. Is Abheda present? Absolutely yes. Okay, so this Bheda and Abheda between the Shaktiman, which is God, and Shakti, the energies, that is Achintya. That means it does it refer to material objects, and it refers. So the Achintya Bheda is such a beautiful philosophy, because you can see it everywhere. In every segment, we can see that there is Bheda, Abheda. In all segments, we can see that there is absolute oneness and there is absolute difference. So the relationship between God and Shakti, Shaktiman and Shakti, it cannot be just described as whole and a part. It is not that, let's say you take a mango and then a portion of that mango is Shakti. We cannot take it like that, because for God, part is not just part of the whole. It is not just like if you take a part out of the whole, it is not like you have just taken something out of the whole, right? So they still form an undivided whole, but there is a difference. So that this relationship, so that means, I'll give an example here. God himself appears in many forms, but he's still one. This is within even Shaktiman. There also you can see the beauty of Achintya Bheda. God's pastimes, names, forms, they're all different, but they're still one. God's different parts of the body, they're all non-different, but they're still one. For example, the Lord eats through glance. He can create by a glance, right? So in this way, there is a difference and non-difference. So the word Achintya, yes, Prabhu, go on.
Suppose that when we also say that Krishna is the origin from there,
Emotions.
parts of innumerable Krishna, Balaram, and so now if we say that one is contradicting the original Krishna.
Very nice, Prabhu. Very nice thing what you said. It does contradict. That is why Jiva Goswami says it is Achintya. It is inconceivable. Don't try to reason out why the Shastras are saying Abheda and Bheda simultaneously. It is, even by Nyaya Shastra, by logic, you can never reconcile. That is the difference also between Dvaita Dvaita of Nimbarkacharya, where he finds the Abheda and Bheda totally reconcilable. So he calls it as Dvaita Dvaita. But the Shastras, naturally, there is a complete, there is Achintya means it's inconceivable. It is inconceivable that there is absolute oneness and difference simultaneously. And what is the basis for you? You got it very clear. That is what it is. But it is not like we cannot understand at all. But it is just not by logic you cannot understand why there is absolute oneness and absolute difference simultaneously. He said that both are it is illogical. That both, how can you say that there is a separation between Krishna and then from him everything is emanating, and at the same time that everything is non-dual, identifying with spirit? How are both reconcilable?
machines are coming, and how there is one experimentation at the original one.
So, but one, I'm not going details into that, but one thing.
The form of the Vishnu and
No, the other thing, in the sense, so Krishna says that their swamps and there is no, they don't have any fall down. But we are also from Krishna, but we are Vibhinnams.
Vibhinnams.
We are separate expansions. So, please.
So this word Achintya, Jiva Goswami gives all these explanations, and the last one is actually taken from Govinda Bhashya. So Mandukya Upanishad talks about Achintya. Kaivalya Upanishad, where it says Achintya Mavyakta. Okay, this material world, the relationship between Brahman as Achintya. Subhala Upanishad, Kanda 7. Bhagavad Gita, there also it says 8.9, Achintya Rupam. And then this is taken from Vedanta Sutra. This is from Govinda Bhashya, 2.1.27, Shruteshu Shabda Mulatvat. So he first says that the basis for all this is Shruti. And then in the next one, in verse 28, it says Atmani Chaivam Vichitrascha. So this whole concept is Vichitra. It is inconceivable, but it is not. I'm going to leave this last part out. Okay, I'm not going to go into that. So to understand all this, I'm just going to give a brief thing here. Everybody, or all of us would already have heard all this, but Jiva Goswami very distinctly takes out two of the methods of pramana here, which is Pratyaksha and Anumana. Pratyaksha as imperfect. Okay, this is by sense perception, because from a conditioned state, any sense perception will turn out to be faulty, and to realize absolute truth through this is as not a valid pramana. And Anumana by induction. Okay, so if it is true for n equal to 1, n equal to 2, n equal to k, then it is true for n equal to k plus 1. So this kind of Anumana is also being discounted as it might work for some, it may not work for other. And he accepts Shabda, Shruti as the ultimate thing. So that is the reason, basis for Achintya Bheda Bheda. Because Achintya Bheda Bheda, how much ever logic you apply, you're not going to come to that word Achintya. So by the revealed scripture, the Shruti is the consummation of all knowledge. Now, I'm going to go to a little bit of theology. So all what we discussed so far is metaphysics, like what is Shaktiman, Shakti, Brahman, and so on. As far as the Bhagavad Gita, there is the first shloka I'm taking here. Mama yonir mad Brahma. This Brahma, tasmin garbham dadamyaham. So Krishna says that everything, the total Mahatatva, is described as Brahman in the Vedic literature. This is taken from the Prabhupada's purport. And the Supreme Person impregnates that Brahman with the seeds of the living entities. Material nature is not the cause of birth of the living entities. The seed is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is the cause of all manifestations of living entities. So there are two things here. One is that Krishna is the source, that is the Bheda part. And the Abheda part is that everything is identified together with Brahman. So that is the Abheda part. So, and then if you see, and further, Krishna as the source, this is again the theological part. Aham Adir Hi Devanam, that he is Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, greatest of all. There are so many verses in Bhagavad Gita which establish that neither the host of the demigods nor the great sages know Krishna's origins or opulences. For in every respect, Krishna is the source of the demigods and sages. So this is a Bheda verse. It talks about absolute difference. Now, having spoken about Bhagavan, we'll talk about the theology associated with the super soul Paramatma. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adilila 2.52. There, even for that Paramatma, the Paramatma also comes in contact, even though technically as not, but Krishna stays entirely aloof in the spiritual domain. But even for that material creation, he expands as Vishnu. And what are the three Purushas? Karano Dakasai Vishnu, which is Mahavishnu, Karana ocean, Virajanadi, that is Garbho Dakasai Vishnu. Okay, you have the Vishnu in each universe at the bottom, and then you have Kshiro Dakasai Vishnu. So Karanodakasai Vishnu as a super soul of the collective universes, Garbhodakasai Vishnu as a super soul of the collective living beings, Kshira is milk in the milk ocean, super soul of all the living entities. But Krishna is beyond all these dimensions in with no contact with the material energy. So this is the ontogeny of the super soul, which is the theological aspect of associated with the Achinta Bheda. Now the connection between the soul and the super soul, Shweta Swatra Upanishad 4.6, Dwa Suparna Sayujha Sakaya, that the two birds, this is a famous verse. There are two birds in one tree. One of them is eating the fruits of the tree, while the other is witnessing the actions. So the witness is the Lord and the fruit. So this is the Bheda Shruti, where it talks about difference between soul and the super soul. And Mundaka Upanishad, Samane Vrikshe, Purusho Nimagno. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But if in the same way or other, he turns his face to his friend, the Lord, and the Lord, and knows his glories, at once the suffering of the bird becomes free from all anxieties. So this is again a Bheda Shruti. And there's a similar verse like this, the two-bird verse in the Kata Upanishad as well. Now comes the definition of the word Achintya Bheda. So we spoke about Bhagavan, we spoke about Paramatma, now we spoke about Brahman. Now this is the definition of Achintya Bheda. This is why this verse is very famous. Sarvasambhavani commentary of Paramatma Sandarbha, verse 78. This is the definition. This is the first place where Achintya Bheda word ever occurs. It is called Swamate Tva Achintya Bheda Eva Achintya Shakti Mayatvad Iti. This is the definition. What is the Achintya? That this substantive, okay, all that exists is endowed, okay, this is endowed with Achintya Shaktis, inconceivable energies. What does the Abheda say? The Abheda states, this is an example with the pot. This is exact analogies used by Jiva Goswami. The Abheda part says that let's take a pot. Let's take clay and a pot. From a clay, you make a pot. Is the pot exactly clay? Yes, there is Abheda because both are clay, right? So that is the Abheda part. Ultimately, pot and clay, both are clay. But the Bheda, still there is a cause. Because from the clay, the pot has come. That means that there is a Bheda. So this is the analogy that Jiva Goswami uses. And so that means that there is a difference between the clay and the pot, but there is oneness because everything is still clay. This is Jiva Goswami then cites this from Taittiriya Upanishad 3.1, where he says, the Lord is the cause. That's the same, this is the verse from Taittiriya Upanishad, Yato vayumani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti, and then it ends as Tad Brahma. Okay, so what it says is, there are three cases here, and this is taken from Sanskrit. Ablative means from whom, instrumental, by whom, locative, that is the locus, in whom everything exists. So inquire about the Brahman from whom everything is born, okay, that is ablative, by whom everything is sustained, that is instrumental, and into whom everything enters, that is locative. So Jiva Goswami uses this to explain this Achintya Bheda. So I have a few more slides. Then there is to understand between what is, to understand this matter, I'll give an example here. Let's say that you have a material mountain, okay, that we are seeing through our conditioned eyes, we are seeing a mountain. Let's take from the Rockies, we go. Bottom of the mountain, maybe nice trees are all growing, plants are growing, there is moisture, there is humidity and so on. Maybe at the top of the mountain, there is snow. That means that there is Bheda. Between the bottom and the top, both are mountain, but there is, you see, duality. But in the spiritual world, there is no duality because the bottom of the Govardhan mountain is identical with the top of the Govardhan mountain. So there is absolute oneness there. So it means that everything is made of spirit, but they are variegated. You have a bottom of the mountain, top of the mountain, but both bottom and top are the same spirit, right? So, and they're all meant for the pleasure of Krishna. But in the material world, there is change and there is duality. So that means What in the material world, we see what is good and what is bad. This is good, that is bad, all these things. But in the spiritual sense, everything is dovetailed with Krishna, and therefore everything is absolute. So all this material conception of good and bad doesn't exist in the spiritual sense. So that means that the Vaishnava sees everything in relationship with Krishna. That means all this matter, let's say you have a tree. For a materialist, it looks like a tree made of matter. But for a spiritualist, they are able to see that as part of the Vaikuntha. Because it is in service, that tree is also in service of Krishna.
Just go on. Then Bheda, yeah, it's there in Chaitanya Charitamrita.
So that means that, okay, I'll give another example. Let's take the dream example. So someone has a dream that a tiger is chasing them in the dream. This is Prabhupada's example in one of the conversations. So someone is chasing them in the dream. So if someone is chasing them, the tiger is chasing in the dream, and in the morning they wake up, and then, but there is no tiger, there was no chasing. So all of that didn't actually happen. But was there a dream? Yes. That the illusion existed. So that means the fact that there are conditioned souls who are in the illusion. What they experience in that illusion may not be real in an ultimate sense, but the fact that the illusion exists is real. That's Bhagavatam 1.1.1 purport. So last but 2 slides, and then I'll do a summary slide of Achinta Bheda. So here again, there is a Bheda part, which is the Lord as transcendent. And how do we understand this? We can see these verses here. Andhantarastam. If you just take that, I split that verse into 2. Andhantarastam, Paramanu Chayantarastam. I'm going to focus just on Andhantarastam. So it means that here he's existing as transcendent. So there is a Bheda there. As Garbhodakasai Vishnu, he's present in every universe. The same scripture also says, Goloka eva nivasati akilatma bhuto. So I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord residing. So it is here, he's talking about Krishna in Goloka, in the Vraja Gokul, residing in his original realm of Goloka with Radharani, resembling his spiritual figure. So here it is talking about Krishna in the transcendent aspect. But then you also have an immanent aspect. Okay, here, as this is with reference to the relationship with the super soul. And what is that? Paramanu Chayantarastam. In every atom, Krishna exists as Vishnu, as Kshirodaka said Vishnu, because that is why the atoms, electrons are moving. Why are the electrons moving? Because the Paramatma exists in every atom. And therefore, Paramanu Chayantarastam, and Bhagavad Gita also says that Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hrideshe Arjuna Tishtati. So this is the immanent aspect of the Lord. So this is my last slide. So this is a summary of all what I've spoken so far. I've simplified it. So so first thing, definition, Brahman means here, if we take it as spirit, Krishna as the source or as the Parabrahman, and the individual soul is of the same nature as that of Krishna. So you have here 2 faces to it. This is the spiritual real conception. This is, and the bottom slide here, picture here, is the conception under illusion. So like how the sun is being covered by the clouds, under the cloud, it appears different. So that means His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, he has given in a lecture a very nice sentence which I picked up, which says, the living entity, the conditioned soul's perspective of this material world is illusion. But there is a real perspective. Okay, so that is about matter. Under illusion, this matter appears dual. But in reality, the spiritual entities, they are all in service of Krishna, both in oneness and difference. So there is absolute. So if you see here as Brahman, the whole spirit, there is a homogeneous whole and there is variegatedness. Simultaneously, both exist. And the soul in service of Krishna as Bhagavan. And the matter, okay, now we'll come to this, but this matter will transform. Under conditioned state, it appears as external energy, but in true sense, the matter actually is also internal energy. It is actually also is spirit, except that we are not able to see it.
Matter is also spirit.
Matter is also spirit. That is like, simple example is bhog offering. So it might, to a conditioned state, it appears as matter, but a transcendentalist who is able to see it is able to see spirit. Because Krishna does not accept matter, because Krishna is all spirit. Krishna has a spiritual form. So where is Krishna accepting matter? So it means Krishna is not taking, because there is no, in the ultimate sense, there is no matter. Ultimate sense, all the matter is spirit in service of Krishna. So if we have, let's say you have a mountain, for example, a conditioned soul sees that material mountain in service of him, giving pleasure. Oh, there is a beautiful mountain, and it appears dual. But a transcendentalist is able to see that mountain in service of Krishna. And that mountain is spiritual in nature and entirely dovetailed in service of Krishna. So that is the difference between in the Mayavada concept, that matter doesn't exist at all. But here what we're saying, that matter, this is called Shakti Parinamavada. The external energy transforms into internal energy. Same way we can see Mahamaya transforms into Yogamaya, and Yogamaya transforms into Mahamaya. So that means for a devotee, the energy appears as Yogamaya. But for a materialist, the same energy appears as Mahamaya. So, and the individual soul, so the Abheda aspect is that it is the same Brahman, okay, so same nature, a spirit as the Lord, so there is a homogeneous whole. And the Bheda aspect is everyone has a distinct, every entity has a distinct spiritual form in service of Krishna. So, yes, Mataji.
That when the jiva has appeal or a desire to serve the Lord in a specific moments. And also in another book, this is like only one way they get connected and they now.
But that, Prabhuji can answer. He would know. Mataji is saying if one wants to serve in two different forms or moods, what is the...
You want to go with and also
The Prabhuji can answer that question.
In a liberated state, Jiva can expand up to 7. So you can serve Krishna in 7 ways. So one Prahlad Maharaj is with, what is that, Sukala Planet, reaching to demons with Bhai Maharaj. Another Prahlad Maharaj is with Narsinghadev, serving Bhai. It expands.
Thank you. Yes, but that in that verse, it talks about Vishnu Tattva there. And then, okay, but ultimately it says from them, it comes. But there also we can see that, for example, Krishna is absolutely identical with Vishnu, but there also you can see some difference. Because there is a source, there is a thing. That is why this Achinta Bheda is so beautiful. It is not just in Shaktiman and Shakti alone, but even in Vishnu Tattva, we can see that. We can see that there is some difference there. And the difference, it is in what sense it is different, because they're all Shaktiman, right? Because Vishnu, Krishna, that is Shaktiman. It is not energies there. It is not like Vishnu's energy and Krishna's energetic. It is both are Shaktiman, both are energetic. But there also you can see the flavor of Achinta Bheda. So, and then, here is so that means that this energy, Shakti, of the Lord is a separated energy. Okay, unlike Ramanujacharya's Vishishta Dvaita, where everything is in all the living entities, matter, they're all integral parts of the Brahman. where the Brahman itself transforms. The secondary modes of Brahman transform. But here in Achinta Bheda, you have the energies transform. So it means like we have now separated the energy from the energetic. That means that the falls of the matter, of the material world, doesn't need to be ascribed to the Bhagavan. So there is a separation. And then, so the Bhagavan as the energetic Shaktiman, and so we have, and then the super soul is immanent and he's transcendent. So the top portion explains the actual state, the state, and the bottom portion is how the matter appears under illusion. So this is like a summary metaphysics slide of Achinta Bheda. So with that, I'll stop. But
Brahman's very Krishna, Supreme Spirit, same as Krishna, matter energy and the religion, reality, spiritual entities in service of Krishna.
Prabhu?
I have a question.
Yes, Prabhu.
What Maya was saying.
Mm.
So, coming back to the point.
Mm.
So, like, for example, that father is not here, don't mind. Putting one example. One time I was being my father and I said that, well, ultimately we are one. So what does it need to talk? So that means me, my father, the act of talking to all individuals.
Correct.
Ultimately individual. And then my question is, so now this illusion is what is it? So this all is there, we can see, we can touch. So how is that illusion?
So Prabhu, I'll answer this in two phases. One, in the Mayavada school, you have these acts of talking, touching.
A little louder.
Okay, these acts of talking, touching, and so on, they are illusion, but ultimately we have to understand that illusion itself cannot exist. Because if that illusion existed, it will result in Bheda. It will result in one thing called as Brahman and another thing called as Maya. So that means we can say all what Maya, we can keep saying, but ultimately that Maya cannot exist. Right?
Maya, is there no Maya?
Ultimately, no. Ultimately, there is no Maya, because if that Maya existed, then it will become Bheda, it will become duality, it will become Dvaita. You have Brahman and there is Maya. But there is a difference there, Prabhu. The difference is that for them, the matter does not exist in the first place. For us, it is different. For us, it is the material energy transforms into spiritual energy, and the matter exists as spirit. That is the difference. But for them, the matter doesn't exist per se. So that means that there is no creation. There is no creation, there is no world, there is no the act of talking, act of eating, all those things doesn't even exist in the first place.
Then how do you explain the activities of this world? Why would build a hospital?
So it is so difficult to actually have such a state, and therefore one has to go for, because how long can one be situated in such a state of just existence? So there is a fall down. So that fall down results in all these other activities, because they have to do, because then they understand they have to do something, because what will they do in this world? Right? They have to do something. But if they do something, then there is Bheda. They cannot follow that philosophy if they do anything. All they have to do is exist. Right? So if one has to just exist, then all actions have to be renounced, and that renunciation itself has to be renounced, and there is no renunciation to begin with in the first place. Right?
So that means now, suppose someone is perfected in this Mayavad thing, So how will they see the world?
It doesn't exist.
So
It
what
does.
They see? The spirit, that's it.
They see spirit. They see spirit.
Spirit floating around.
Yeah, it cannot float around. It exists. If it floats, then that means that there is a dimension to it. And that, so you're creating a locus for that floating, right? That will create Bheda.
So that is spirit.
There is spirit. That is a summon, but there is a problem here, Prabhu. The problem here is, how do you know that all there exists is spirit? Because the Shastras are saying so. And why? And so if there are something called Shastra, then there is Bheda. Because you have Shastra and you have spirit. So what is the basis for saying that there is spirit? So ultimately you have to, even the existence of Shastra also have to be taken out. Right?
So only thing that is Brahman.
Brahman.
And what is Brahman? What is that?
Brahman, that is a homogeneous, unqualified, undifferentiated, attributeless spirit.
So everything is same, Brahman.
There is a Brahman, there is an unqualified spirit. So there is an unqualified spirit and homogeneous, unqualified spirit. And like, for example, if you go a little further, who is teaching you that, Prabhu? A guru is teaching. But can a guru exist? No. Because that will create Bheda. Right?
So that is like, you are me, I am you, and kind of thing.
Correct. Because there is, so there cannot be Bheda on any, but what we... Abheda. Sarvam kalamidam aham brahmasmi tattvamasi. Everything. I am the Brahman, you are Brahman, all that exists is Brahman. So, but we are not, that is the part of it, Prabhu, is we are not saying that all there exists is Brahman is wrong. Because the Abheda, we are accepting it as it is. But all we are saying is there is also absolute Bheda too.
Sorry, then how did Shankaracharya write Bhagavad Gita commentary?
It talks, okay, I'll give an example of that. I'll take one Bhagavad Gita shloka and then I'll give an example. Let me take another easier one. I'll take, Prabhu. I'll take this one verse here and I will tell you how this verse is interpreted by Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, and how we say it. So I'll take this verse. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. I'll take that verse. I am the greatest of all. Let's take it like that. So what would Shankaracharya say is aham. When Krishna says aham, Krishna, it refers to, forgive my offenses for a minute here. Okay. So when Krishna says aham, it refers to Krishna's soul. And so because that is how you can say Abheda, right? So it refers to Krishna's soul. And when you say Krishna's soul, it refers to my soul, your soul, their soul, whatever soul. And everybody's soul is the same Brahman. So what it means, Brahman is the greatest of all. Aham sarvasya prabhavo means Brahman is that spirit is the greatest of all. That is the translation for that verse. So what would Ramanujacharya say is aham sarvasya prabhavo. It does not mean that aham does not refer to Brahman, just okay, as a non-dual part, okay, the Brahman, it refers to spirit in that sense, it's okay. But Krishna, when he comes as an expansion of Vishnu. Therefore, it says that Narayana is the greatest of all. That will be the Vishishtadvaita commentary for this verse. What is the Gaudiya Vaishnava commentary for the same verse? Aham sarvasya prabhavo. It simply means Krishna is the greatest of all. There is no need to interpret that. Krishna is saying he is the greatest of all. There is no need to interpret that. And that is not an Abheda Shruti. That is a Bheda Shruti. Krishna is saying that he is the greatest of all. Aham bija parampita. So he is the seed-giving father. This is the Bheda Shruti. So he is the seed-giving father. Everything emanates out of him. So all these are Bheda Shruti. So this is an example. So same verse can be interpreted so you have to go 3 steps to get to Shankaracharya's translation. For example, from Krishna, you have to go to Krishna's soul. From Krishna's soul, you have to go to everybody's soul. And then from everybody's soul, you have to go to the Brahman. And then from the Brahman, you have to go to undifferentiated. But so many levels you have to go to get to that translation that Brahman is the greatest of all.
Probably the they worship Shakti, right?
Yeah.
Like Kamakoti, Kamakoti. So why do they worship Shakti?
They are worshipping Shakti for the lower conditioned souls. The real Advaitin cannot worship.
Okay.
Real Advaitin cannot. That is, so there is this, they themselves. So there is this book called as Advaita Siddhi. It is written by a person called as Madhusudana Saraswati. He is also from Navadvip, unfortunately. And he is also from Navadvip. And then he wanted to go meet Jiva Goswami, but it did not happen. This is in the 1600s. He wanted to go meet Jiva Goswami. It didn't happen. And then, but he learned bits of it in Navadvip. And then he went to Varanasi. And then eventually he became a staunch Advaita. In their sense, not our Advaita, but their Advaita. And and then he wrote a book called Advaita Siddhi, which tries to defend their philosophy in various ways. There he gives an explanation there where it says it's like their Advaita is like Advaita concomitant with Mayavada is like a mountain, and the top of that mountain, so-called mountain, is where all there exists is Brahman. But all for the lower people, you can go worship Shakti. You can go, what Prabhuji said, Kanchi, Kamakoti, all these things, all these things you can worship. But that is not meant for the completely realized Advaitin. A completely realized Advaitin, there is no temple, there is no worship, there is no Shakti, there is no, none of this exists. Because then it will become Bheda. So then why are you doing it? Because Shankaracharya himself composed so many shlokas. He composed Govindashtaka, right? So why would he compose? But there you have to find a twofold purpose. One purpose is where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in the Padma Purana, he's come here for a purpose. And the purpose is because India at that time has become almost Buddhist in nature. So he had to protect it and bring the supremacy of the Vedas. So he had to state that. And so from voidism, people cannot just go directly to worship of the personality. So he had to create that thing. And there was an in-between phase. So that is one part to it. But the other, and he himself being Lord Shiva, he's praising Govinda. So that is a different aspect to it. But the other aspect to it, what his followers would say is that this is all meant for those in the Vyavaharika zone. Okay, the Vyavaharika is a lower zone who are not able to realize that they are Brahman. And for them, all this Govindashtaka, Krishnashtaka and all, he had to write it. But then once you realize all these things, that all there exists is just Brahman, then you have to renounce that Govindashtaka, because that Govindashtaka doesn't exist in the first place. In fact, the speaking itself doesn't exist in the first place, right? So that is the...
that's how they do this mauna, they sit down.
Yeah, but that mauna itself cannot exist in the first place. Because that will create Bheda, right? So then came a question, where is then, if there is, okay, so that means in our Vyavaharika state, there is a Maya, but in the Paramarthika state, that is the ultimate sense, there is no Maya at all, because all there exists is Brahman. So what is the locus of that Maya? Where is this? So that means if there was Maya if you see like Venn diagrams, you can see one circle you put as Brahman, another circle you put as Maya. If you put Maya separate from Brahman, there is duality. If you put Maya on top of the Brahman, it is called superimposition of Maya on top of Brahman. It is not compatible because the Brahman and Maya are not compatible. Because Brahman is Sat Chit Ananda, which are not attributes of the Brahman, because that is the definition of Brahman according to the Shankara school. Because if they become attributes, it will result in Bheda. So that was the first objection in Chandogya Upanishad, which Ramanujacharya gave because he said that they are not just, that is not the definition of Brahman. The definition of Brahman is not Satchit Anand, but they are only attributes of the Brahman. That there is, so what is the locus of the Maya? So you cannot have it separate from Brahman, because that is Bheda. You cannot have it on top of Brahman, because that means Brahman and Maya are superimposed on each other, and it is incompatible, because Brahman is the greatest. How can you have Maya on top of Brahman? That is like Brahman itself is all covered by Maya. That cannot exist. So what is the locus? it is like as though it exists on top of Brahman, but it does not exist. Right? So
That's also illusion. It appears it exists, but there is
it doesn't
Maya
exist.
at all.
Yeah, there is no Maya at all.
There is nothing.
And this Brahman, but that Brahman does not include matter. That's the main part in it. The Brahman does not include matter because the matter doesn't exist. Because there is no world, there is no creation, there is no. It is actually, to me personally, it is a little sad because even if you're not going to Krishna, even if you've prayed to various devatas, you have taken all the help you want from them, only ultimately to say that they are, such a worship didn't even exist in the first place. It is ungrateful in a sense to me that you're in a conditioned state and then you took all the help that you need. Ultimately, even if you didn't go to Krishna, at least you took from those devas in one sense, even to only say that my worship for you didn't actually even take place in the first part.
How does Krishna explain Panchavaha?
And all that doesn't exist. There's a Shastras itself cannot exist, right?
No, but he's the one who established Panchavaha.
Yes, that is all for the lower souls. Those in the Vyavaharika platform can do all that. But in the ultimate sense, you have to realize that you are Brahman. So, but what we have to understand that even for those, but in the Bhagavatam, we'll find that there are transcendentalists who understand the Abheda part, that they're called Brahmavadi. They're not Mayavadi. They are Brahmavadi. Like even Sukadeva Goswami, when he was oblivious to everything around in the surroundings, but even for such a self-realized soul, in this case, of course, he heard the Bhagavatam and then he became the devotee of the Lord. That is the verse, the Atma Rama Munayo, Nirgrantapi Urukrame, that attractive Hari can attract even those Brahmavadis. But that Brahmavadi, even for them, Krishna is merciful. Even for them, he gives Sayujya Mukti. Even for them, they may not understand the personality of Godhead Bhagavan, but even for them, without the mercy of Krishna, they cannot attain even that Sayujya Mukti. Whether they may not know it, but even for them, Krishna's mercy exists. Mama Maya Duratyaya, Mameve Prapadanti, Maya Metan Tarantari. Even that, any covering has to be ultimately removed by Krishna. Stop there, Prabhu. Yeah.
So the thing about how it is considerable, I just meditate on this. Like you say, all of Krishna's senses, they're all powerful. He can like eat with his nose, expand with his ears. So then, if you say that they are not different, at the same time they're different. So then it becomes very difficult to understand.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Yeah. That is one example. What you have given a correct example, but there is one example. Ultimately, what it refers to is the relationship between Shaktiman and Shakti. The relationship between God and his energies. Relationship between, that is Krishna and his energies. That is, all his energies are absolutely one with him with no difference at all. And simultaneously, they're absolutely different.
So I can make sense of that because qualitatively they are one. But then in the qualitative, there is variation. Like for example, like in the spiritual world, that one Gopa and one generally Gopi, yes, they are same in the sense they are all Satchitanandamaya. But then the kind of Satchitanandamaya is different.
So okay, you are that is okay, Prabhu. So here you're talking about the spiritual variegatedness of the let's say you have a Govardhan mountain, you have a grass, you have a flute, so they're all in spiritual entities in service of Krishna. But that is still talking about the Bheda, because it is talking about the variegatedness in spirit. But the Abheda here is the absolute Abheda means that there is a homogeneous, undifferentiated spirit. The undifferentiated spirit exists simultaneously with all the variegatedness, the spiritual variegatedness. That is Achintya.
I think it's
Is that okay, Prabhu? Yes, Prabhu.
It is Lord Haribol to you.
So one more question is we'll take. Yes, Prabhu, go on.
For a devotee, when he goes through the realization, he said that
Can you speak up, Prabhu? I didn't hear you.
for devotees, when they go through realizations, that there is Brahman realization, Paramatma, and then Bhagwan realization.
Mm.
So for a devotee, what is this Brahman realization? Like understanding that he is spirit soul and he is part and parcel of Vishnu. Is that the realization, or there is something deeper there?
So, Prabhu, I'll put it this way. The the Bhagavan realization encompasses everything else. So you do not need a separate Brahman realization, a Paramatma. It's the same non-dual substance, right? The same non-dual substance is seen as Brahman by some transcendentalists, is seen as Paramatma, and is seen as Bhagavan. When you're calling oneself as devotee, then it automatically means that one is focused on the Bhagavan realization. That is the focus. The Brahman realization that is a part realization. Is a part realization, and it is incomplete because it has not taken the other Shruti texts into picture. And the Bhagavan realization is an all-encompassing in his complete attributes. That is the Bhagavan realization. The Brahman realization is an attribute-less realization, for which we don't have to put that much effort, because if we do the Bhagavan realization, all the other things will come on its own. That is like saying, if I put all the bhakti, Krishna bhakti, which is bhakti itself means only Krishna bhakti. That's what the definition of bhakti is, Krishna bhakti. That's what it means, right? So Krishna bhakti, it encompasses, it's like a ladder, right? Like how in the 6th chapter Bhagavad Gita, you have a yoga ladder. In the same way, the bhakti encompasses all the other things, the jnana, all those things will come automatically in that bhakti, right? And that bhakti has no contamination, no mishra. It is not some kind of, it is Shuddha bhakti, pure devotional service, but it encompasses everything else. It encompasses everything else fully. So there is a book actually by His Holiness Shivarama Swami Maharaj, where it's called Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani. It's about 1,000-page book. But where he builds this concept about various, you have Jnana Mishra Bhakti, you have Karma Mishra Bhakti, and then all these things, and then to go to that pure Bhakti, that Bhakti Lata beach, that pure devotional creeper, and where there is no contamination, and that kind of Bhakti. But even though it is that kind of pure, it encompasses everything. So, so that is why if we go towards Paramatma realization, those people are called yogis. So Madhvacharya is the greatest of the yogi, because that is a super soul realization. But we are focused here on Bhagavan realization because everything else will automatically come. We don't have to, there was even one verse, there was verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There was this Brahmana in the Srirangam temple. He was reading Bhagavad Gita, all wrong, he was reading. But then, but when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him, but everybody was laughing at him, but Mahaprabhu asked him, what is it that you're feeling so happy about it? And then that devotee there in the Srirangam temple said, when I read this Bhagavad Gita, all I see is that beautiful bluish black complexioned person in front of me. And Mahaprabhu said that he has understood all the scriptures. So that means like whatever, independent of all the knowledge, what we gain, ultimately, if we are not seeing Krishna, that means that all the knowledge is waste. But if we are able to see Krishna, then all the knowledge comes on its own. So in Bhagavad Gita, there is this verse which says, in the 18th chapter, Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tatvatah, that all the tattva are self-evident to the devotee. Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tatvatah. The tattva is all self-evident. So devotional service will encompass everything else. But if you just go for jnana alone, it will be incomplete and it won't suffice for even for that prayojana, for the ultimate goal of what we're looking for. So we stop there, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you very much, Jayananda Prabhu. Very, very nice class. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.